Well, we're in about as small as you can go, little microbrewery, just out of Esperance. This is the first commercial brewery that I'm aware of. Obviously, we've had a couple of wineries in the district, but in terms of beer, this is the first one.
Is this something you've always wanted to do?
I'm not sure. I think I sort of fell into it a little bit, working in grain quality, and we did some market development work with GRDC, with Barley into Asian brewers, and just sort of like accumulated those sort of the understanding a little bit of the brewing industry from sort of a technical end, and I just sort of thought, well, that might be worth a go.
So tell us how long it's taken to get to this stage.
I guess we probably really started to coin the idea about 5 years ago, and from that we sort of looked at it from a few different angles and looked at different ways of microbreweries being set up around Australia and New Zealand and also into Asia. And then probably about 3 years ago we started to really seriously look at it, and about 2 years ago we started to sit down with different government departments and discuss how we might be able to do it.
Sounds like there's a lot of red tape involved. Are you surprised that you finally got to this point?
I mean, there were certain areas of red tape that I expected, and then there were certain areas that I didn't. And I guess, making sure you supply that information and keep pushing through is required. So I guess perseverance pays off, but you definitely need a lot of energy for that.
Well, we are standing inside the shed that's been built and retrofitted for this purpose. So let's go and have a look at what all of these steel tanks do.
All right. So that's our mash tun. So we in here we grist between sort of 150 200 kilos of grain or malted barley. And we sort of make like a hot porridge in there, and the extract from that we drain through, and we bring it across to the kettle on this side, and in there we boil it for about anywhere between an hour and 90 minutes, and add your hops in there as well. And from there we cool it through a heat exchanger, and it goes off to fermentation.
Righto, let's go on to have a look at those next tanks.
This is a fermentation vessel. These are sort of purpose-built beer vessels, and what makes them purpose-built is their conical bottom, and that enables all the yeast to be cropped out at the bottom. So particularly for our ale yeast that drop out, we can then drop that from the bottom, and we can use sedimentation over time to clear that beer up. And also they've got a jacket around the outside which we temperature control, so we keep that yeast between a temperature range that we're happy with, and that gives us consistency of flavour. If you have yeast that has a different temperature profile over fermentation, it will give you different tasting beer.
Rightio, and then onto these next lot of tanks here. They're not so conical in shape or cylindrical like the others. They're quite square really.
These ones here are probably ones that I may or may not have bought. I've yet to sort of utilise these properly, but they're sort of storage tank, and they give us a bit of flexibility of putting beer in here and sealing them out over time, because they're on. We can pick them up with a pallet handle and we can wheel them straight in the cool room.
Speaking of which, a bit chilly in here, Nigel.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. So this is when, by the time it gets here, we're just about on the home run. So we have carbonation tanks in here. So this is an important vessel because it's pressurised with CO2 over, say, a 24-hour period. And that basically force carbonates our beer. We can bottle condition as well, and that's where we do a secondary fermentation in a bottle. But when it goes into kegs, we'll carbonate in this one. And then these are the empty and full kegs ready to rock and roll.
So how many kegs, I suppose, have you filled? Because this is the initial run, is that right?
Yes, these are our two first brews. So we're getting, we had a few little efficiency issues that we'll need to improve on in our first couple ones, but generally we're getting sort of, we're saying sort of 16 and 17 kegs from our first, from our brew, and they're about 50 litres each. And we also we'll do some exchange kegs with those smaller ones for the home brewers that perhaps can't be bothered home brewing, that just want to bring in their corny kegs, or they have the kegerator on the back veranda. But this is primarily aimed at the local pubs, and we're looking to work with them because obviously they run entertainment venues, and we're going to run a production facility, so that's where we need to come together.
Righto, well let's get out of here because it's a bit cold.
No worries.
Now, Nigel, back out in the shed itself, we're having a look around, and there's a great big pallet rack here and some bulker bags of local barley, I understand. Tell us a bit about what you have learnt over the last 10 years that you've been working with the local grower group Sepwell, which I suppose has no doubt helped you to be where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. And basically with GRDC we did a project looking at trying to basically muscle out a bit of the rice out of those Asian beers and put some raw barley into there. In that process, I sort of was exposed to some technical blokes in the barley industry and the malting industry, and we sort of looked at this process where we brew with raw barley, and it's taken us a little while to learn about that. And in fact, we're probably up to our 20th or 30th test brew before we were actually happy with something that I was prepared to bring out to market. And yeah, there is a few little different ways to brew with the raw barley that need to be sort of taken into account when changing over from malt.
And I understand that these bags in front of us, the bulker bags, are Bass from a local farmer?
Yeah, that's correct. So we used Bass last year because it had really good grain size, and that helps us with milling. This year we'll probably change over to Latrobe, just because that's the variety that will give us probably the greater dominance. And also the science behind the raw barley brewing indicates Latrobe's a pretty good variety, because there is a bit of variation between the background genetics.
But there are obviously a number of malt bags here as well, so you're having to... it sounds like it's quite a science behind what you're doing here.
Essentially, it's a bit like baking a cake, and our raw ingredients vary depending on what type of cake we're baking. We still have some of our beers which are virtually 90% malt, which comes from our traditional malt sources, be it either Joe White's or Barrett Burston. But in that, we're always using a small component of raw barley, just to really make it known that this is our local beer.
So how much local barley will you use to brew this local beer?
Given that we grow about 500,000 or 600,000 tonne a year, a drop in the ocean. So probably, we might use 4 to 6 tonne of barley a year, depending on what the response is from out there.
And as you mentioned, you've got your kegs ready behind us here in the cool room, ready for today. It's a big day for you.
Yeah, so this is the first time we'll stand behind a product that has our name on it. And we'll just sort of get a bit of feedback and check that everything's pouring before I'm then ready to front up at the local pubs and say, well, okay, here's our product and here's its attributes and here's how you can sell it.
And so this is predominantly for that wholesale market?
No, well, I mean, we're going to do, we can sell growlers as well, which is that 2 litre flask. I do expect the main volume of our beer to flow out through those known venues in town already.
So this is the first day that the public's going to be able to have a little bit of a taste, Nigel. What interest are you getting from the local entertainment industry?
Look, so far we've had really positive support, and I guess Little Creatures broke the mould 5 or 8 years ago, whenever they did, and people are prepared to try new beers now and for people to try new flavours. And we're very fortunate that those guys branched out and did that, because we certainly wouldn't be here today without some forerunners like that.
And the name itself, Lucky Bay Brewing Company, obviously a very iconic local landmark, and the kangaroo on your label, that mustn't have taken too long to think up.
Yeah, I mean, basically someone says, search engine optimization, look at your online and that sort of thing. And if you have photos of Esperance, you will, and you Google that, you will end up with Lucky Bay. We have something to be proud of here. It's our local coastline, and all our beers are named in association with a local area. Sandy Hook, Thistle Cove are just a couple of them. And we've yet to name our Kolsch. We're probably going to try and engage people out there to give us a suggestion of a local beach or a local place that they think is naming of a good Kolsch after.
You haven't done this alone. Your partner Robin's been more than supportive, I understand. Being that today is quite a big day, are you seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, is she?
Yeah, I mean, Robin spent all yesterday getting our final compliance in order. We were only granted our liquor licence on Wednesday. So just signage and all that background work, it's been really, really important to keep pushing through. Food safety plans, that sort of thing, recall plans. Definitely, I was, particularly when I'd run out of energy, she there stepped up and finished that off.
So this is kind of the soft launch. When do you expect that this could be in, every pub in town?
Well, we've obviously we had initial discussions with the local pubs. Now we'll just go forward. Once I'm really happy with the way that they're pouring and they're presenting, then I'll go back and see them, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have a tap on at the pier.